Hello, my name is Tracy Sinclair, and welcome to Coaching in Conversation, the Mastery Series. This series of conversations explores the concept of mastery in coaching. And I have the great pleasure of talking with several ICF Master Certified coaches from around the world to understand what mastery really means to them, both as coaching practitioners and also as human beings. We explore many different perspectives and nuances of this topic, and I hope it is of use and interest to you as you continue to navigate your own pathway of development. Hi everyone, it's Tracy Sinclair here with another episode of Coaching in Conversation, this time with an episode in our Mastery series. I'm joined this time by Benita Stafford Smith, who is not only an amazing coach, very experienced working with executives, systemic team coaching, working with organizations around cultural change and transformation. She is also a registered author. She is also a published author and actually has a book coming out this year in 2024, which she has co-authored called The AI and Digital Coaches Handbook, a very topical subject at this time. Benita is also very pioneering in that she has been living in Oman for many years now and has immersed herself into that community, and in fact was pioneering in bringing coaching to Oman. It was something that was unheard of when she arrived, and she developed a coaching offering and nurtured that offering to the point where she was integral in the setup of the ICF chapter in Oman, which is now flourishing and thriving with local coaches who are now taking that forward. So I'm very excited to offer you the opportunity to hear the conversation with Benita, who has so many interesting perspectives on mastery and ways to engage with mastery. I could have called this episode many things, but the topic the title that I have concluded is, do you trust yourself? Enjoy. Well, Benita, thank you so much for taking the time to connect with me today. I'm really looking forward to our conversations for more than one reason, actually, as we were just discussing. I think you bring such an interesting perspective on probably many, many things, but two very key things is one is the concept of mastery, particularly within coaching, but also the fact that you've lived and worked for many years in Oman, which has a very different culture, perhaps, I'm sure, a very different way of working with coaching as a discipline. I'd love to hear your perspectives on all of those things. So I'm going to hand over to you. Please share what you'd like to about who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive into those topics.
Okay, so I guess I'll just begin with, I was a Canadian living and working in Oman in Canada, and I didn't come to Oman until I was actually I was 47 years old when I came. So I was quite late in life. And people often say, why on earth would you move to Oman? Why would you move to a Muslim country where, women are perceived to be overlooked? Why would you do that? And it kind of for me combines with the topic of mastery, because for me, it's all about experience. It's what value can I contribute to the profession of coaching, to everybody I interact with, and to the world that I can impact. So that's mastery for me in one sense. It's broader than just coaching. I think about the mastery, there's the skill level, which is a credential, but then we start that's when we just begin the mastery journey. That's when we start, because then there's this invitation. Now what? Now you have all the skills, you've got them down. Now what? And I think that's a fascinating question for coaches to answer for themselves. Now what?
Now what?
Yeah. So for me, it's more about adventure and pioneering and creating something new, which I think is what coaching is about, actually. It's about exploring and creating.
So we've sort of gone to that place of mastery. Let's
okay.
carry on with that, and we come back. I'd love to bring Oman back into this afterwards. So you said two really interesting things there, which I'd love you to say more about. One is it's a beginning, and that's curious, I think, because so many people think of mastery as an arrival or an ending or a destination. Okay. And you've really interestingly framed that as it's the beginning of something. And then the other part where you talked about it as being a pioneering adventure to do and create something new. Please say more about those things.
Yeah, so I'm going to say it's the beginning, because I think, once we have our competencies or our skill level at a level where it's just automatic for us, we aren't thinking about it. Then for me, it's about broadening your horizons. How can it's hard to explain, but I'll use it like this. I was listening to a webinar given by an astronaut, and he was talking about space travel and all the benefits to humanity that space travel has brought, and all the ongoing training and development that happens to an astronaut once they've launched. And I thought, well, isn't he talking about coaching? Right? And it was like, what's your perspective? And do you just, okay, I'm an astronaut, now I'm in space, that's it, I'm done? No, you continue your training, but it's not in the same thing that you started. So it's a new beginning. It's a new perspective. It's a bigger world. So that's, I think, why I think of it as the beginning. And I think it's really important for coaches when they, when I think about mastery, it's not mastery in one place. It's mastery in curiosity. What else is going on in this world? What can I learn about, I don't know, pottery or cooking or, chemistry or physics or something that takes me completely out of what I know.
Yeah.
So that's the pioneering, the expansion, I think, that comes once you've got your skill level, then it's broadening that into different perspectives, which contribute back to your profession.
Yeah. I love that. And thank you so much, because you've just joined up some dots for me. Okay. In that one of the things I've shared with some people is that for me, my learning around mastery started when I got my MCC, not before. And from that point, I realized there was something else, and started reading philosophy, reading poetry, doing yoga, studying yoga sutras, which was very much aligned. I'm realizing now with what you were describing of it opens up somehow a new domain.
Yeah, because there's so much in this world. And I think, that we need to stay focused on the coaching world until we get our skill level to the point where it's kind of automatic. But that's just the start. Then what about the rest? That expansion is so important when I think about mastery, and especially in coaching, because we come across clients from all different disciplines, different functions, different parts of the world, different viewpoints. And if we've got blinders on and we only understand one perspective, that's not mastery. For me anyway. So it's about broadening that horizon.
What you're saying there, Benita, makes me think about, if I ground this in the competencies for a moment, is
Mhm.
things like working with the whole person.
Yeah.
And also this idea of context, of being mindful and aware of the context, both of us and the client, the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Without that broader learning and awareness, then the sphere of awareness is going to be just so much more contained and limited, isn't it?
Absolutely. So if, for us to be of service, because I think the coaching profession is a service to humanity. I don't think of it as just I'm a coach. I think of it as a service to humanity. And if we're not able to, well, if we're not, I think the invitation that comes with that, once you have your credential to the highest level, is broadening your horizons and literally seeing humanity instead of just my coaching client. Because at the end of the day, they're humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're all humans. They're all beautiful human beings. And we can't appreciate that unless it's inside us first.
Mm.
So I think it always starts here, and then we can give service to the rest of the world.
Mm.
And it isn't about knowledge. It isn't about how smart I am. It's about, I was just reading a beautiful David White poem, actually, about, I don't care which God you believe in, et cetera, et cetera. It was a beautiful poem. I wish I knew the whole thing. It said, I only care that you can feel another person's pain and sit with it. Like, oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Just, it may not be pain, but I often say, we're human beings. We all have warts. We have to love our warts and other people's warts. We all have them,
Yeah.
So, yes, for me, that's what mastery is about. It's that, I think, again, one of my favorite Carl Jung quotes is that learn all your models and theories as best you can. Know them the very best you can know them. But when you're sitting across from another human being, be just another human being.
Mm.
That for me describes mastery.
Yeah. There's something there just so beautiful, isn't there, about just the simplicity and yet the power of absolute presence, just being with.
Yeah.
Rather than doing, saying anything, really.
Yeah.
The capacity to truly and wholly be with that other person.
Yeah. And I think it's something that you mentioned, and coaches always talk about, is the powerful question. Like, what's the powerful question? Like, we have to have the powerful question. And I think that just unfolds. You don't know it beforehand. You can't possibly know it,
Mm.
but the client will guide you down that path.
Mm. Mm. And I guess that takes quite a lot of trust, doesn't it? To let the client guide you down that path. There's a lot of trust in them and you.
Yeah, I think the trust is in you, actually.
Mm.
I think the trust is in you. Not in them, not that you trust them, but that you trust yourself, that you can sit with that person and listen to them.
Mm. Mm. And
Yeah.
if someone was to, someone who is aspiring towards this pathway of mastery, this lifelong pathway, I guess, of mastery,
Mhm.
what would you share with them from your own learning in terms of what has enabled you to find access to that place, to that space?
Gee, that I can answer that question in so many ways. So, I think we hear a lot today about presence, the coach's presence. And I think it's important that each coach defines what that means for them. The pathway there, I think, is different for everybody. I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer to that. There's something about being able to connect with some people call it spirit, some people call it a higher power, God, Allah. It's 1,000 different names, but I always think in a coaching session, there's another presence, another energy that happens. And I would invite people thinking about that pathway to try and get in touch with that. No matter what it means to you, just to be able to know that there is another presence in the room, a presence in the session, that has that can give us confidence, or give us a clue as the right way to go. I'm not quite sure how to say it, but there's just something happens in those absolutely beautiful coaching sessions that is greater than myself and the client. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me what you call it. It's just, I know it's greater than the two of us.
Yeah.
You know, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I'm making an assumption here that you also feel like I do, that mastery is an ongoing thing. It's not just something we get one day and then we've got it forever. That it's, for me, it's a practice almost that is part of, you know, my own lifelong ongoing growth. What for you have you learnt about what gets in the way of that? What sort of takes you away from being able to access that?
For me, I can only speak for myself, and I see it in many other people, is busyness. I get busy doing instead of focusing on the being. I have a calendar, I have all these meetings, I have to do this, I have to do that, la 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 la, and I get completely bogged down in that doing part. So for me, there's a precaution about not putting too much on my calendar. For me, space is really important. And it's space on the calendar, but it's space that gives me space to reflect. I think reflection is so important if we're talking about mastery. You have to be able to sit back and be able to literally sit back and reflect on what you're doing, how you're showing up. So reflection is just, for me, is key to everything. Yeah.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I couldn't agree more with you, but it's also fascinating, isn't it, that it seems as though in today's world, busyness is more rife than ever it was before, and space is at a premium.
Yes.
It's a precious commodity, isn't it, that we're trying to bring in.
Thank you for that, Tracy, because I think also that's very true. Often clients will say in a coaching session that the most valuable thing we did was they took time out for an hour.
Yeah.
And they took a time out. I mean, they didn't time out, but they took time out from their schedule.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to the importance of doing that, and how we need to actually find a way to build that in. It's not just about putting the time, because some people put the time and then just fill it with some other thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
For me, it's about creating this space for yourself. And if you can create it for yourself, then you can offer it to others.
Yeah. You're making me think of a story I once read in an article from an author. I can't remember what author it was now, but the journalist was interviewing him on his book writing process. And he said that for 4 months of the year, he writes roughly a book a year. He's quite prolific as a writer. And he would take him, very good, very enviable, isn't it? But he would take himself away, and I think it was in Canada actually, to a little cabin somewhere, devoid of all human contact, you know, lots of canned food to last him for a long time. And he'd go away for 4 months of the year to write his book. And so the interviewer said, "Oh, so it takes you 4 months to write a book then, does it?" And he said, "No." He said, "It takes me 1 month to write the book, but it takes me the preceding 3 months to empty my mind of all of the clutter,
Yeah.
have the space for creative thought to emerge." And
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that's what an incredible story, which is so aligned with what you're sharing there.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. And that, it's interesting too, when you talk about a writer. I was just listening to a podcast by an author, and he said, "Gee, I think it's really funny that you asked me to come be a speaker." He says, "I don't speak to people. I hide out in the cabin for 6 months and write stories. I don't have anything to do with people. I don't know what to speak to you about." I thought that was kind of an interesting contradiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
But a nice contradiction, not a bad contradiction, but we often encounter those contradictions, don't we?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do you mean you want me to take time for myself and just sit? Are you crazy? Like, sometimes that thought is so shocking to people. But
And yet so valuable.
and so valuable. Yeah, it's so interesting. But I think life is a lot like that. Those things that we think are crazy and insane, once we explore them, we often go, "Hey, that's pretty useful, actually."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The other thing that you said about mastery was how it was a pioneering adventure.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on that. They're quite interesting words, a pioneering adventure.
Yeah. And because for me, that's what mastery is. It isn't about repetitive, taking classes, getting certificates. It's about doing things I haven't done before. It's about stretching myself to a place where I don't even know what to do. Right? So that's what I think is adventure and pioneering, because I don't know what it is. There's so many examples I could use of things. So right now I'm contemplating going to Rwanda and walking with the gorillas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's pioneering adventure. Talk about taking me to a different world that I don't understand, I don't know anything about, and getting me away completely from what I know. And I think that's the key for me. Maybe not for other people, I don't know. But I think for me, it's not about another degree or another credential.
Yeah, I'm loving this idea of, there's so much of this idea, isn't there, of this pathway that goes from coach training from one credential to another credential and so on, which is as you say, is a great pathway to follow. But there is then so much more on the side of the roads, on both sides of that road. I've got the sense almost of a long motorway or a long highway, and then this vast terrain that's on either side that we could be blinkered to if we're just following that path. We're not actually seeing all of this amazing stuff that we could be learning and engaging with and experimenting with.
Yeah, and I think, knowledge is important. I'm not saying it isn't important. I think taking courses and gaining knowledge isn't also an important piece. It's just, it's not limited to that. It can't be limited to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that will really stretch us, but not if its only purpose is to get another certificate, another credential. Then, okay, good. If the purpose is to explore, so maybe you take a course in quantum physics, I don't know, right? Strange world to me. So I could get a certificate, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to get the certificate.
Yeah.
I'm doing it to broaden my perspectives.
You're making me think of one of the episodes that I did of this podcast with Sakina Jones, and her theme of her podcast was Find Your Why. And you're just reminding me of that because of what you're saying there around your purpose. What is the purpose of that pathway? What is the purpose of the credential or the purpose of the learning? Because
Yeah.
Purpose is going to, I guess, dictate in some ways what you do and don't engage with.
Yeah. Yes, yes, and also I think sometimes purpose confuses people. It's like I have to have a purpose. And sometimes you don't know the purpose for a long time afterwards. Sometimes events happen and you didn't understand the purpose. I always use this example about, I think that many people, especially in the beginning of their lives, think they have to be Steve Jobs or Mother Teresa. That's their purpose. It has to be world shattering. And it doesn't have to be. Our purpose can simply be to expand our knowledge, to expand our understanding, to be of service to humanity, and even if it's in small ways. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. So sometimes I think it confuses people when they start thinking about what's my purpose. They always go like, oh, it has to be this big thing that I'm doing. And I think it's more about who you're being.
I love that. So we started out with the topic of mastery and Oman. So having worked with Oman for a long time, you then made the decision at 47 to go and live there.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that story and perhaps what that has done for your knowledge and your self-awareness and your coaching and mastery.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to say that when I came to Oman, I didn't have a purpose except to go to another country and explore. That was simply my purpose. When I got here, no one knew what coaching was. So, a purpose opened up. And, it took from 2008, it took 7 years before I was able to establish a coaching chapter here. And it was all expats at the time. I'm really happy to say now there's a thriving chapter, ICF chapter in Oman, which is predominantly Omani coaches now.
Wonderful.
So it's again about how often do you get to be of service like that to a country? How often do you get that opportunity? It wasn't my purpose. I didn't know that when I arrived here, but it unfolded as my journey unfolded. And like what an amazing gift and what an amazing privilege. But I didn't speak the language. I'm a female in a male-dominated culture. I was across the ocean I didn't know anybody here. So it was interesting. It was talking about an opportunity to expand, expand who you are. It taught me. I'm going to say the most important two things. It made me realize what an amazing gift I could give to this country. And second of all, it really made me more curious and more independent, because I didn't have, back back in our home countries, we have a coaching chapter, whatever it is. There's always other coaches around. There's friends around. There's family around. There's always someone that we can rely on for support. And here I was dumped in this country. There was no internet, phone. I didn't know anybody here, and I didn't know the language, and I didn't know the customs. So it was a beautiful learning opportunity. It was amazing. And it continues. So
you're reminding me, with all of those things that you've just described there, Benita, you're reminding me of this trust in self. The need of trust in yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
That when you're pioneering like that, even though you might not realize you're pioneering at the time, as you say, there's an element, I imagine, of where you had to draw upon your trust in yourself to go over there in that way and start, a completely new part of your life.
Yeah, I share a funny story with, people always say, "Oh, you're so courageous. How could you do that? It took so much courage." And I think it didn't take any courage. I think it was just stupid. I think I just didn't know. I didn't know how challenging it would be. But it's always really interesting what people say that helps you reflect on what you did. But I can remember, I think I was here for maybe 3 months, and I had been in, but there was a shopping mall. There was one shopping mall at that time, and I had been to the shopping mall to get some things to set up my apartment. And I was just leaving, and one of my nieces called from home from Canada. And honest to God, I walked outside of that mall. I just sat right down on the sidewalk and bawled my eyes out. It's like, oh, oh yeah, that took a lot of courage, Benita. But it's just part of the process. It's part of the unfolding. It's part of
Yeah.
It's just part of the process.
Yeah.
But so I always laugh when people say, oh, you're this and this and that. And I think, yeah, if you'd have seen me sometimes, you would see how brave I was.
Yeah.
But it's fun, it's fun to look back on those things.
Well, I guess also what you're describing is a mirror, really, of the space we're trying to also hold for our clients, isn't it? Because their lives may be unfolding in a way that isn't familiar to them or comfortable to them. And, they may not feel that trust in self, or maybe they do, but they're also equally petrified, or this is the broad range of the human experience, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's not making judgments. It's not. I think mastery is about being able to not make a judgment on what they say. If someone says, it doesn't say, oh, that must be really, like I said, people saying to me that took a lot of courage. Well, that's kind of a judgment, isn't it? How do you know it took me courage? Right? And I often think of that when I'm coaching. Be careful. Just be so respectful of that person and make that space for them to come forward with what they're ready to come forward with. Because who knows what that is?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's so easy to assume, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's also the beauty of the coaching profession. And, when you say, what do you tell new people? I'm telling you, if you're going to become a coach, be ready to do self-development for the rest of your life. Be prepared to learn for the rest of your life, and be prepared to have an amazing life. Because it's not, it isn't a boring profession. At least for me, in any sense of the way. It's so interesting. People are so fascinating.
Yeah. And I mean, I love what you're saying here about, be prepared to be a lifelong learner and be prepared to have an amazing life. And I guess what I'm noticing is, and I'll own this as my own response, is I feel that there is a part of our profession that's, through popularity and the growth of the profession, that doesn't necessarily see it that way, that there's an element of where coaching is this kind of money-making cookie cutter development industry that is now not so much about that huge personal investment of the practitioner around their own growth, but is more of a transactional exchange. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you may disagree. I'm just wondering what you notice.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as you say that, because for me, that brings in the whole topic of the future of coaching. If we stay with coaching as a cookie cutter type of profession, which I'm not saying is, I'm not judging right or wrong here. I'm saying there is that perspective, and our profession will be taken over by AI. That's cookie cutter, task-based kind of coaching at the moment.
Yeah.
And that I'm not saying either is right or wrong. I'm just saying that when I think about that, I think about the future of coaching. And I think mostly when I think about that, I think about, well, what about new coaches who are on that journey to mastery, who have that passion? Where do they get experience? If people are only going to hire coaches who have been coaching for a very long period of time and have that experience and that mastery, where do there used to be a big market. Those coaches could get lots of experience, but now that's being encroached upon, I think, by AI.
Mm, mm,
And so I wonder, I have, I guess I'll call it faith that they'll always find a way,
mm.
but it'll be more challenging than it was in the past.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we're not in the business of giving advice, but if you were to give some kind of advice to one of those developing coaches, given the current marketplace and where it seems to be evolving, what would your offering be?
I would advise them to know as much as you can about AI. It is becoming very prominent in our industry. So you can't just turn a blind eye to it and
Yeah.
say, oh, yeah, no, yeah, but that's not what I'm doing. Maybe not. Have a look at it. You have a unique gift that you bring to the world. So work on that gift.
Mm, mm. That's what I find myself saying to students is, AI can do a lot of great things. It can deal with a lot of the transactional work and will add value in that respect. What it can't do is be you, is your uniqueness, is your humanity. And so in some ways, all of these things that you've been describing, Benita, around how we become more masterful seem to be ever more important to be that humanity, that deep presence when we're with other human beings.
Yeah. And I think, we'll start I don't know if this is correct or not, but I think we'll start to see a broadening of coaching from an AI perspective and a narrowing of coaching from a mastery perspective. So I think it's really, and I think about, about ICF and EMCC and coaching credentialing bodies who are now really emphasizing the presence of the being versus the doing. I think of AI as the doing and the person-to-person coaching as the being. So if you're a coach who's just doing, explore, pioneer.
Yeah.
Stretch yourself somehow, somewhere, without having to, we always have to know the answer. Yeah, but what's the answer, Benita? What should I do? What course should I take? I don't know. Take something that you know absolutely nothing about. If you've never picked up the paintbrush, go take a painting class. Right?
Yeah.
If you've never mixed, different compounds what do you call them? Vials, in chemistry vials, take a chemistry course.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but look for it.
Yeah.
Right? Because the in-person coaching is, in my opinion, narrowing. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's limiting it, because I think it's a much bigger market than we can possibly cover.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So it's not limiting it, but it's
changing.
It's changing and it's differentiating more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah.
When we spoke before we started recording, you mentioned the past, present, and future. You said it's all about the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah.
As we're coming towards the end of our time today, would you like to say a few words about what that meant for you?
Yeah. So I think that the past and the future exist in the present. And that's what we need to focus on. When we talk about presence, for me, that's about being present, because I'm not forgetting my past. It taught me beautiful things to bring into the present, but I don't live in the past. And when I think about the future, it's important that I'm looking at the future so I can understand what might possibly be coming, but it doesn't exist yet. The future exists within the present. how I think about it, how I react, what I do, how I'm being. So my present is influenced by my past and my future. They aren't separate to me.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
And maybe just before we pause then, Benita, is there anything else that we've not discussed today? Anything else that you'd love to share with our listeners around any of the topics that we've covered?
I think what you mentioned earlier, it's about trust. Do we trust ourselves in the moment? That's all that we have. And so do we? How do we do that? Right? I think it's a fascinating topic. I don't think there's an answer to it, by the way. I think it's an evolving answer, which is what the beautiful part of it also. I don't see things as having an answer. I just get one answer and then I have another question.
Yeah.
So it's continually evolving, it's continually changing. Yeah, and I think that makes it fun.
That's the adventure, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, but I've been wanting to take up painting classes for many years. So you've maybe prompted me to put that higher up on my list.
Yeah, I took a university. I don't know why. I don't know what possessed me when I was in my 30s to take a university painting class. It was the funniest thing. Because what I discovered was that everybody else who registered in a university painting class had already been painting for years and years. And I was asking the stupid questions like, he would say, well, draw this. And I'd say, well, what would I draw that with? They would look at me like, oh, no. But I did pass that class, and that was the most exciting pass mark I ever got in my life.
Wow.
And it opened up, like I saw the world completely different from taking that class.
Yeah.
Completely different. It was so interesting.
Well, that alone speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know I'm not going to be an artist, and that's fine. That isn't my calling this lifetime to be an artist. But man, it was so interesting to look at. Now, if I look at a tree, I see all the colors in it. I don't just see green leaves and brown trunk, which is what I saw before. So yeah. So yeah, Tracy, do it.
I will.
It's really fascinating, as everything is. To me, everything is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Benita. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I know the people listening to this episode will have too. So thank you so much for coming and talking with me today. Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. You have been listening to Coaching in Conversation, the Mastery Series, a podcast that takes a look at mastery in coaching, what it is, what that means, how do we nurture or cultivate it, and many other interesting questions. You can hear more about coaching education and development at tracysinclair.com and follow us on social media. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and a review, and also share it with your network to help us expand our reach. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.